Another bird that got Dr. Martin's attention lives down under, mate, in Australia.
It's moments like these that remind me of the dangerous fact that this is intended for children.
There's a little bird in Australia. It's called the Australian incubator bird. Some people call it the mound builder. Sometimes it's called the brush turkey.
Ah, hello Dr. Martin. So it's the incubator bird today, is it? Well, okay, maybe you'll get this one, as currently it's 3-0 to Evolution on the scoreboard. Possibly you'd get somewhere if you stopped arguing from personal incredulity, but hey ho, anyway, line up the birds because it's another episode of Less Than Amazing Creationists Who Defy Logic.
And there's different species. We'll talk about one in particular. But this little bird, about 3.5 to 4 pounds, the female has 2 jobs. Her first job is to check out the nest and see if it's going to be okay. The male builds the nest, and then the female checks it out. Now you would say, well, big deal. She's going to check out the nest. Well, this nest is not like any other nest. Some of these nests have been measured at 20 feet across and as much as 50 feet high.
Can we just think logically about this in a mathematical sense? A nest 20 foot wide, yet 50 feet high. I'll come to the actual size of the average nest later, but doesn't this seem a little top heavy?
And some of them dig down into the dirt 3 to 6 feet. So it's like a huge, that's why they're called the mound builders. It's like a huge mulch pile. So she comes and she digs down in there, and she comes out and says to Mr. Bird, I don't like this one. And so he says, okay, hang on for a couple months, I'll build you another one. Okay, so he builds her another one. Let's say she likes this one. Now she goes to job number 2, and that is she lays eggs. Now she lays 1 egg every 3 days for 7 months. And it's a little 3.5 to 4 pound bird, and the eggs are almost a ½ pound each. They're almost as big as an ostrich egg. Impossible, impossible. She's dead. I mean, you can't do that, okay, but she does.
Firstly, it happens. Secondly, this is not extreme by bird standards. Here is an X-ray of a kiwi. That's the mother of all birth pains, but it's possible.
Now, this one species, the female makes a very thick shell on the eggs, and it has pores. All birds' eggs have pores, that's how they breathe, but this one, the pores are shaped like little ice cream cones, and the tip of the ice cream cone is in toward the inside of the shell. So as the chick begins to develop inside the shell, he gets to a certain day and he can't get enough air. He's going, I can't get enough air. And so he begins to shave off, scrape off the inside layer of the shell. And that makes the holes bigger. He's going up the ice cream cone, so now he can breathe. And so he does that all the way along till he finally breaks out of the shell. Now the male bird takes care of the nest. The female, once she lays the eggs, she just goes off, and now he takes care of the nest. Now you would say, well, is that a big problem? Well, yes, because each species has some different qualifications for the nest. And this one I'm going to talk about, the male keeps the nest at 91 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 months. And if it varies by much more than a degree on either side of 91 degrees Fahrenheit, the chicks die. So Daddy Bird is out there every day. He digs down into the nest and he checks the temperature, and the scientists aren't even exactly sure how he does the temperature. But he checks the temperature. Oh, it's 92 degrees. It's too hot. I got to do something. So he runs back up, and sometimes he'll throw sand on top to try and reflect more sunlight, or he has various things he'll do. He also keeps that nest at about 99.5% humidity. If it gets down to about 80%, the chicks dry out, the eggs dry out. He has to keep it at roughly 99% humidity. So 91 degrees Fahrenheit, 99% humidity. That's impossible for a little 3.5 pound, 4 pound bird.
Well, now that you've had your fun, why don't we take a look at the actual nesting habits of the Australian bush turkey? First of all, they're not singular builders, i.e. they are communal builders. The community consists of a group of a dominant male and several subordinate males underneath him. They all build the nest collectively, then the females come along, then they'll fight for dominance, who gets to breed with the female, etc. So, yeah. Also, the average size for a nest is only 5 feet high. So nowhere near the large sizes you talked about earlier. I don't know where you got the 50-foot high statistic from. I couldn't find that anywhere. On top of this, When doing some looking on information about the Australian bush turkey, I did come across Ken Ham's blog on the matter, and there was a little quote in there about how the birds detect the temperature that I think is quite interesting. Some scientists think the bird's thermometer is in its beak. Others believe its tongue can distinguish 91 degrees Fahrenheit and a few tenths of a percent above and below 91 degrees Fahrenheit. So you see, we do have an idea where this ability is located. We're just homing down on the precise aspects, and everything that I could find on the matter suggested in the Australian bush turkey that the ability was located in its beak. On top of this, the whole 91 degrees Fahrenheit to a few tenths of a degree is completely and utterly false. The range is actually between 91 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 to 35 degrees centigrade, a far more accommodating zone than a few tenths of a degree. Also, they do not generally start new nests, they add to old nests each year. When they do start a new nest, however, that will decrease their chances of breeding in that season. But then the next year they will definitely go back to that nest, build on top of that nest, and their chances of breeding will increase that year, and they'll continue to do this, increasing their chances more and more. This, plus the communal aspect, explains why there can be some freakishly large ones. However, this does not explain the top-heavy nests that you proposed earlier of 20 feet wide, 50 feet high. That's 2.5 times the height of the width. That does not explain that one. Lastly, about the humidity. The humidity is quite easily produced by the rotting vegetation. It's a very good aspect of compost. A lot of species use it. There's no magic here. The only magic trick that is going on here is how you are attempting to pull a fast one on your viewers who will not likely check what you are saying.
When the chick hatches out of its egg, it has all of its feathers. As far as I know, it's the only bird that it's ready to fly. But it can't fly because it's down deep in a big mulch pile. Now, nobody feeds this little bird. Dad doesn't feed the bird. Mommy bird doesn't feed the little baby. They come out of the egg, and then they somehow know, I got to get out of here. So they turn over on their back, and they begin to scrape the sticks and leaves on top of them, and it'll drop down on their chest, and they shake it off their chest, pack it down with their little wings, dig some more, falls down, shake it off, pack it down. It takes up to 3 days for them to dig out of the nest. And nobody told them to do that. Nobody told them to go. Which way? Which way do I go? But how do they know that? You see, well, evolution can't explain those kinds of things.
This is a state of hatchling known as precocial, i.e. the bird hatches fully feathered and is not blind, etc. Specifically level 1 precocial, in which not only is it fully developed physically, but it also is independent, i.e. it does not require the parents to take care of it. To precocial alone, there are 4 different stages, ranging from the level 1, which I just mentioned, it is capable of looking after itself, to the lower level, level 4, which it requires the parents to look after it even though it is physically developed. Then on top of precocial, we have 3 other stages that deal with the physical development of the chick at hatching, i.e. we have semi-precocial, which is similar to precocial but not as extreme, semi-altricial, and lastly full altricial, which is the case of chicks born without feathers and their eyes closed, etc., who are completely dependent upon the parents during their first few weeks. So, yeah, it's not a single case or an interesting phenomenon. It happens throughout the bird world.
All right, so here it comes. He's out of the nest. Nobody shows it what to eat. He goes off. He knows what to eat. He knows how to catch it and find it. And then the next year, the male bird is going to build a nest. But Daddy Bird didn't show him how. He starts building a mound all by himself. Nobody showed him how to do it. It's a miracle. It's just a miracle.
Or it's just instincts, i.e. innate sets of behaviour passed on generation to generation, i.e. if a bird failed to do this and failed to build a nest, then it would fail to breed. If it failed to breed, if it would fail to pass on its genetics, it would be effectively removed from the gene pool. Natural selection still at work.
And so you look at even something like a little Australian incubator bird and you say, how could that evolve? If this story of evolution is true, how could that happen? I say, only God can do that.
And I would have to say that you are both deluded and misinformed.
Here's something most of us pull out of the icebox every morning.
Americans keep polar bears in their fridge. Now that would be a miracle. Oh, you just meant eggs. Can you please stop using the present tense when standing in front of what you are not talking about? Couldn't you just go, "and coming up," like every other presenter? You're trying to be hip, but it's coming out like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers.
If you take an egg and you put it in warm water, you will see bubbles coming out. Now, why do you see those bubbles? Well, because there's little holes all through the egg shell. About 10,000 actually in a chicken shell. Those holes are there so that the chick can breathe, because that's where he gets his air, through those holes, so they can get the waste out of the shell, because the chick, as he develops, is going to eat the yolk, and the yolk, as he burns it up, there's waste products, there's water and different things given off, and he has to be able to get the waste out of the shell, or for instance, just the amount of water that's given off, he would drown right there in the shell.
That kind of goes against the entire purpose of the amniote egg, i.e. the egg that's shared by reptiles, dinosaurs, birds and mammals, and yes, mammals are included there because early mammals did lay eggs and two still do to this date, i.e. the echidna and the platypus. Anyway, the shell originally developed as it allowed amphibians to broaden their breeding zones, therefore increasing their chances of survival. This aspect became so pronounced that they could actually lay their eggs in completely arid zones. This also co-evolved along with the other reptilian aspects that we recognise, i.e. the scaly skin, which also allowed them to survive on land for long periods of time. Simple.
How do you explain all the intricate mechanisms and the perfect timing that it takes for an egg to develop, making this whole thing happen? Because every step of the way, the chick would be dead. Everything has to be done on a particular day and in a particular order, and the timing has to be exactly right, or you have a dead chick.
For someone who claims that evolution is making a lot of assumptions and speculations, you aren't half having a go yourself. We can see how the egg has developed to this modern day. Minus the dinosaurs because they are extinct, however we do have very pristine fossilized specimens that do allow us to map out effectively.
If you have ever boiled an egg or eaten a hard-boiled egg, you'll notice when you peel the egg, there's like that little membrane in there. And that membrane has to be there, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But on one end of the egg, it's flat, and it looks like the chicken didn't quite fill the egg. Well, that's a special place. That's called the air sac. And so now we take all these parts and we put them together, and we have this little fertilized egg, and now this little chick is developing. By the 5th day, its little heart is pumping. Blood vessels have grown out of the chick. 2 of them go up, hook into the membrane, and those are the ones that it's going to breathe through. It'll get its air through that. The air comes through the pores or the holes in the shell up to the membrane, and then the membrane transfers the oxygen to the artery, the vein that goes into the chick. And then the other vessel that hooks into that gets rid of the waste, and so there's a process there of things coming in and things going out of the shell. 2 more blood vessels hook into the yolk, and that's the way the chick eats. And as he lives in this shell, he begins to get to where he's too big and he can't get enough air, and it's now the 19th day. Now, during this time, he has grown a little tooth on top of his beak. It's called the egg tooth. Now, most of us grow our teeth inside our mouth, not on our beak, but the little chick has this little egg tooth.
Which, by the way, is a brilliant sign for evolution, as many species share this trait. From reptiles, to dinosaurs, to birds, and even the mammals, i.e. the echidna and the platypus, have egg teeth. It is an ancestral trait to help them hatch out from the egg.
And on the 19th day, he takes that and he pokes a little hole into that flat end of the egg where the air is. That's called the air sac. And now he has 6 hours to breathe. Now, if we're swimming and we're on the bottom of the swimming pool and we've run out of air and we get up to the top and I just made it. We usually just sit there and lean there and get some good air and breathe a while. Well, not the chick, because if he got into that air sac, I mean, he's going, I can't get enough air, and he pecks into that on the 19th day, not one day sooner or one day later or it's dead. It's the 19th day, goes into that sac. Now he's got 6 hours. Now, is he going to just sit there and breathe that air, or is he going to say, I need to do something else with this air, which is what he says. I've got to get a little hole and use this 6 hours of air. I got 6 hours to peck a little hole through the shell. And now he breathes from the 19th to the 21st day through this little hole in the shell. On the 21st day, that's the day he breaks out of the shell.
When a person breaks the surface, of course they're just going to sit there breathing, because the danger has passed. In survival situations, however, it's a very different matter. Take, for example, the men trapped inside the capsized ships of Pearl Harbor. They were banging on the hull for days as the rescue workers attempted to cut through the inch-thick steel to get them out. They didn't stop. They didn't wait. They were trying to escape. Sadly, they did not have the ability from the inside to cut their way out. They were waiting for people to cut them out from the outside. So when a chick is programmed to escape, guess what it's going to do?
Now, in the meantime, the systems that hook into the membrane and the systems that hook into the yolk, all of those little vessels, they begin to disattach or detach themselves. And when he comes out of the shell, sometimes he might have a blood vessel hanging on him somewhere or something like that. But the fact is, these things, it's like he's dropped his space suit off and he is ready to go. And so he comes out of that shell on the 21st day, but every single step along the way had to have perfect timing. It had to be done exactly right.
But the idea of right in this sense is not perfect. Anything but. It's not like a roller coaster. It's more like a road. There is a varying degree either side that allows for change. And then eventually you can start turning off into one direction. So, yeah.
And when he comes out, he's a discrete entity. There's no mistake. This is a chick. All we see in all of nature, in the fossil record and in living creatures, is just discrete, identifiable. We can label them. That's a cow. That's a chicken. And so I think that's more evidence that God made everything, including little chicks, just exactly like they are.
Nice try, but chickens are the last thing on this earth that you want to use as evidence for creationism. Firstly, thanks to selective breeding, chickens have a large range of variety. This shows us just how much selective breeding in a few generations can change them. So imagine what natural selection can do over millions of years. Then we also have the facts that we can trigger bases that have been turned off to produce teeth and other theropod-like aspects in them from their dinosaur ancestry. Chickens are anything but an argument for design. They are very much like the giraffe, an argument for evolution.
Wow. Breakfast is not going to look the same. Did you know in an official test at the University of Missouri, chicken number 2988 laid 371 of these things in just a year? That's a lot of eggs.
Good for you, David. Good for you. Well, that's all for this episode of Less Than Amazing Creationists Who Defy Logic. Please don't forget to rate this video. If you're not subscribed, click subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment if you enjoyed it or if there are aspects that you want me to improve upon. Also, above all else, don't forget to share because maybe other people will also gain enjoyment from this video. So yes, this is Essence of Thought. Take care and out.
Mm-hmm.